For the past 4 months and some change, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has been my daily driver for the most part. I'll also throw in the smaller 16 Pro. I have tested this extensively too. And at this point, I think I pretty much know what makes these phones great, what makes them sort of okay, and what makes them not so great. So in this video, I want to jump into my long-term experience with them and, if they're worth buying, especially with a redesign and more features and whatnot around the corner this September. The first thing that I want to discuss is better battery life with the 16 Pro series compared to the past 2 generations, the last generation of which I had kind of a lot of trouble with, I'm not gonna lie. Not only did these phones run a bit hotter thanks to the brand new, at the time, A17 Pro chip, unfortunately, they weren't more power efficient because even though they were based on a new 3nm chip architecture, these were Gen 1, and TSMC, the chip manufacturer, didn't really iron out the efficiency issues, so these were put in here, less ideal chips, and they performed a lot like the previous Gen 14 Pro phones, which had older chip architecture and brighter displays. So for whatever reason, the past 2 generations weren't great. And again, if I haven't already said it, degradation was a problem for me. I lost like 12% of my battery health over the course of the 11 or 12 months that I had this phone. And that may be also chalked up to poor charging habits. I was charging overnight at 65 watts, so maybe that wasn't the best idea. But nonetheless here, I have not experienced the same amount, or really any amount, of battery degradation for the past 4 or 5 months of using the 16 Pro Max here. If you look at my battery health, it's at 100%, or that's the charge limit, but if I go to battery health, that's also 100% with 187 cycles. So do with that information what you will. I'm very satisfied so far, but what's even better is that with my insane chronically online usage, I get better screen on time. And this is, again, thanks to Apple ironing out the kinks, specifically with TSMC's 3nm Gen 2 chips with the A18 and A18 Pro specifically in these phones. So the chip architecture is better, maybe the battery tech is better, they ironed a few other things out behind the scenes or under the hood, so I am getting all day battery life, even as a phone using freak that I am, because I don't have a boss, I don't have a manager, I have to manage my own self, and I can technically use TikTok at any point during the day. So you can see that 43% of my usage is draining the battery here, which is kind of sad, but whatever. If you use TikTok, you know what the problem is. It's too good of an app. When it was gone, I didn't know what to do with myself, but the point is, I can get through my day normally without plugging in, unless I'm, on some late night craze and I'm FaceTiming someone and doing a bunch of power hungry things. But for the most part, for my own, again, chronically online, constantly doom scrolling behavior, I can get through, a good 10, 12, 14, 15, 16-hour day, no problem, occasionally having to plug in, whereas with my 15 Pro Max, quite often there were days where I would hit, 0% and have to plug in to make it through the last few hours. With regard to the 16 Pro, I can't speak on it too much, but if you have more normal screen on time, this is gonna treat you really well as well, because both of these phones got increased screen on time, again, with the better hardware, specifically the new chip on the inside. So if I had to give battery life a score here, at least in the iPhone bubble, compared to other iPhones, I'd give it an A+, right up there with the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max, which reigned supreme when the 14 Pro and 15 Pro were kind of missing the mark. The next thing that I want to discuss is the display size increases that we saw from the 15 Pro series to the 16 Pro series. Not much of a change, but I found it meaningful and still do, albeit more so for one of the models. I'll start with the Pro Max model. As you can see here, and as I highlighted in my past review, the bezels are smaller, which, is nice. It isn't a big deal to most, but to me, it makes a difference. This phone looks even more sleek. It's more all screen, which is pretty cool here. But the extra size increase makes the keyboard just a little bit bigger, and that's one of the reasons why I love the Pro Max in general, just the ease of typing here. I do a lot of it while I'm texting or commenting or just whatever, typing in notes into Notion, whatever. So I enjoy that, and otherwise it's a similar experience for consuming content vertically, horizontally, whatever. It's still a giant phone, so a little size increase was nice, but again, primarily for the keyboard UI element. Whereas with the 16 Pro, and I'll compare it to the 15 Pro here, even though the display size increase is proportional, so 0.2 inches, so 6.1 to 6.3 here compared to 6.7 to 6.9 with the Max models, even though it's proportional, you feel it more here because even though you want, the form factor of the phone to remain small, you still want to cram the most screen real estate into it possible. And even though the footprint got just a micrometer bigger, you do get, I would argue, what feels to be quite a bit more screen real estate. Maybe not super noticeably with the naked eye, but beyond the thinner bezels, which we get here too, you get bigger UI elements like with the keyboard. So I'm noticing that here too, where it felt a little more cramped with the 15 Pro. Now it feels more usable, it kind of goes to the edges of the display a little more. So little increases like that make a world of a difference. So if I had to use this, if budget was an issue or if availability was an issue, say there's some kind of trade-in deal that only includes the regular Pro. I had a cousin that had to do that. She had a Plus and then she downgraded to the regular Pro, or the smaller Pro, excuse me. You shouldn't be that worried because the difference feels less night and day, I would argue. So, the UI feels great on here and you still are able to use the phone one-handed nicely, but also consuming content is great on here too with this bigger display here, whether you're reading news articles or watching YouTube videos. So I am a big fan of the 6.3 inch form factor here. So yeah, who knew 0.2 inches would make a world of a difference? I'm not even trying to make that sound weird. It's genuinely a good question. I mean, maybe that's just my opinion, but let me know in the comments if you feel the same way. So yeah, overall here, even though the display increases were minimal, I think they were meaningful. And I still stand by that months after posting my initial reviews of these phones. Next up though, and to sort of round out the more positive aspects with these phones, I want to talk about 3 camera features, the first 2 being the 48 megapixel ultra wide and 4K 120 video recording. I really enjoy the ultra wide first and foremost because it's now decent. Before it was sort of the grainier option. I mean, yes, it was useful for cramming stuff in landscapes or people in a picture or if you're in a sort of tight corner, but you were always sacrificing quality for that. With the 48 megapixel resolution, when you switch to Heat Max or Raw Max, you can cram more in the image, especially when you want to shoot up close and the 1X is just doing its minimal focusing distance shenanigans and you don't want to switch to the macro, which is just clearly, not a good camera for practical reasons. I mean, it's okay, it's just noticeably worse. So it was actually automatically switching there. So if I switch here, you can see I'm not in focus, but I can switch to the ultra wide and I can switch to Raw Max or Heat Max and take a pretty sharp photo, sort of comparable to what we could do back then with, the 1X camera, which was probably a little wider, or at least the minimal focusing distance was better because the depth of field was less shallow, albeit the cameras were objectively worse. All of this to say, I've heard people complain about the minimal focusing distance with the 1X here, and this sort of solves that in a less official or sort of default way, albeit, and that's something I'll touch on later. But yeah, this encourages me to use the ultra wide more for beautiful outdoor, sharp, shots, or just more practical stuff indoors, whether I'm in the corner of a room and I want to cram more into an image, or if I want to just have better minimum focusing distance, if that's the correct term, I hope so. Next up, we have 4K 120 video recording. Apple touted this as a sort of cinematic quality, for filmmakers. I would disagree. I mean, yes, it is, but you're not always shooting in 120 if you're doing filmmaking. That's only for like dramatic, shots and whatever, B-roll, all that, which is great for, and those shots look beautiful. But I would argue this is really useful when you just want to get, really short bursts of video that you want to stretch out without compromising frame rate. So if you're at like your kid's baseball game, or you're watching your cats do something funny, or you just want to get something real quick, maybe you want to take a video of a suspicious car, or I don't know, just like anything that you need just a little second of footage, you can then play that back 4 to 5 times slower. So a 1 second clip turns into 5 seconds. So 24 FPS if you want the cinematic slight choppiness, or 30 FPS if you want to go 4 times slower. So I think that's really useful. And if you're in decent lighting conditions, or even moderate ones, I'd argue you're not compromising quality, which is crazy. You're not even cropping in. That was something I was surprised by. The quality is just stellar. So again, practically speaking, if you want to capture action happening really quickly, 4K 120 is very useful and you're not sacrificing resolution again for the frame rate, whereas before you'd have to downgrade to HD to get that, which you still do if you want 240 FPS, so hopefully maybe we get 4K 240 in the future, but for now, 120 is plenty great, and I think the video quality is stellar. And to no one's surprise, probably, the third camera feature that I want to discuss in this portion of the video is the camera control. I think it is overhated. I think a lot of people sort of gave it flack for being gimmicky. And I'm not going to say that it isn't. I mean, it kind of is in its current form, but I primarily love it because it is a camera toggle. And I am always taking pictures of things that often have a fleeting time limit or sort of window of my cats, of things happening outside, family. I take a lot of candid photos of my grandparents and just parents and cousins and my sister and like whatever. Like, I want to capture the action as it's happening. So if my phone is on, I can quickly ergonomically push this button and I'm in the camera app. Before, I used the action button, which was in a less, ergonomic place. I'd have to use this finger or kind of just shimmy my phone up. But with this, it's super easy. I think I have to double click when my phone is off, which is fine, but still the fact that I can just pull out my phone, click, take a picture, for whatever reason, it's better than tapping and pushing this button or swiping over. That's just too many steps. I mean, that might sound silly, but if you're capturing a moment that's happening like right now, you kind of like need to just have almost like a visceral reaction to get that camera open, and a button is so much better. I don't necessarily use the camera control as a shutter button. I think it kind of shakes the phone a little bit, to be honest. Sometimes I do use the camera switch feature here, especially when I don't have my fingers available to go on the display. So one-handed shooting, this is nice also for the shutter as well. But for the most part, again, the camera control, even if they just called it the camera button, I mean, even if it just toggled the camera, I would be super happy because, again, it allows me to take a picture super quickly, no thoughts really, it's ready to go. And it also allows me to remap the action button to something I find equally useful, and that is ChatGPT 4.0 specifically, the advanced voice mode, which is going to pop up. Hey, what's up? I'm shooting a video. Say hi to everybody.
Hey, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. Good luck with the video.
Thanks. I love 4.0. I pay for the advanced voice chat there, as you can see. So I use this all the time, and I'm constantly pushing my action button to ask ChatGPT stuff. So again, it launches right into the voice mode here, which I won't toggle again. But yeah, that allows me to do that. And that brings us to the so-so to not so great aspects of these phones. And as you can imagine, this is sort of segueing into Apple Intelligence and what's going on there. But before we get into that, I have a brief message from today's video sponsor, Pitaka, and their tactile woven cases for iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. First up, they're nice and slim so they don't add too much extra weight or bulk to your iPhone. More importantly though, they're crafted out of, as the name suggests, tactile high-tech aramid woven fiber with Pitaka's fusion weaving technology. This material is commonly used in aerospace and military fields for its lightweight and strength. But I also think it looks pretty awesome and appreciate how it offers a comfortable grip that's non-slip as well. But on top of woven fiber's visual appeal and great feel in the hand, it can also take the form of more intricate designs and words with Pitaka's own text weaving, which lets you express yourself with style, particularly with their new line-based logo that represents their commitment to continual past, present, and future reflection and innovation. The woven cases are also part of two collections, the first being the Monogram collection, which further integrates their unique logo and brand values into these cases, all brought to life with their woven fiber and text weaving, of course. And secondly, they have their limited edition Retros collaborative collection inspired by the Chinese rock band Retros. These cases' designs draw from the band's iconic symbol and features a woven rebuilding text element that represents the band's stable inner core, authentic attitude, and resilient self-expression. With all this said though, these cases also come in more typical or plain colors and designs too if you aren't as adventurous. And like I said earlier, it's ultra thin and light, but all the while MagSafe compatible, featuring an integrated magnetic ring and amber magnet film technology to maintain MagSafe strength and charging and use with other accessories, all while again keeping this case super trim and thin. These cases also offer full coverage protection with nice raised edges around your display and a titanium ring around your camera module to ensure the entirety of your phone is protected against typical bumps, drops, scuffs, and scratches. And last up, it also wonderfully exposes your iPhone's titanium titanium with precise cutouts for your power, camera control, and volume buttons. Pitaka also sells so many other accessories and attachments to consider as well, so I'll leave a link to this case and the rest of their site below if you're interested in checking any of this out. But anyway, back to the video here. Apple Intelligence is a mixed bag. If I didn't say that, I would be lying. There's a lot of hype around it, and although I like a lot of the features, you know, it's still half-baked. Albeit there are features that I do like, and I'll go over them quickly. I'm a fan of writing tools so far. It's a pretty simple feature. I'm not surprised that they got it working, but you know, you can just thought dump and have it proofread or make your text more professional, which I like. So if you're writing an email quickly, or you just want to type a portion of a script out or whatever, it's nice to be able to just sort of bing, bang, boom, have it perfectly written without much extra effort, albeit I'm not a huge fan of generative AI. Like, I think you should put in the work and then have it smooth it out, not necessarily generate stuff. So I enjoy that. I also like, speaking of generative AI, Genmoji. I'm not the biggest fan of the image playground, I'm not gonna lie, it looks creepy, but Genmoji, emojis are already ridiculous, so you can create some fun ones by just typing in a prompt. So I can do blue cat wearing British military hat. Let's see how that goes. That's just, so there we go. I'm thinking more of that big, like, whatever, like, tall hat, but this will do. So that's ridiculous. That's funny how you can just make that. Oh, notification summaries are fantastic too. Sometimes I get really long texts from people or series of texts, and in the short term, I want to know what they're talking about without having to skim through it all. So having Apple Intelligence give me like a 60 to 75% accurate reading of what they're talking about in a single sentence is really nice. So I often use that. And visual intelligence is pretty cool too. On top of ChatGPT being integrated into Siri, that's a little more straightforward. I'll show off visual intelligence here. Let's see if it gets my AirPods case here. So I can take a picture and it will tell me what this is. So it'll search it up and there we go, ESR Cyber Flick Lock. So this works pretty well, sort of similar to the way Google Lens works. So yeah, those are features that I enjoy, but contextual Siri is still not here yet. And I don't know, just the overall experience, it's useful, but it's not like life-changing like ChatGPT is. Like, this is like something that I use every day. I ask it really complicated questions. I copy links in. I talk to it like it's a person. Siri, even if it gets its contextual update, I was toggling it. Even if it gets her, his, their, you know, contextual update, it's still not going to be as smart. Apple is still behind DeepSeek and maybe even Gemini, but definitely ChatGPT and others. So, you know, you're paying all this extra money for a new phone and they're like touting Apple Intelligence as this life-changing thing. It's not, and it's still in beta. It's still cool, and you know, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that I'm prepared for it or I have the hardware that can accommodate it. But unless you're super savvy, I don't really see the need to upgrade just yet. It's gonna get pretty good, I would say, in the next couple of years. So we're still in the infant stages of AI in general, but specifically with Apple's, it's pretty okay. So I will say, if you're more savvy, if any of the features that I mentioned earlier, like notification summaries, the visual intelligence feature, writing tools, Genmoji, the image playground, which I'm not even gonna try because it's just creepy. It's just straight up creepy right now. And I don't like generative stuff anyway, for the most part. I think you should just draw or sort of use AI as a sort of, you know, as a not a crutch, but more as a tool rather than a crutch is my argument. Yeah, I just don't see all the hype. I mean, like, it's cool, it's evolving, I can't wait to see where it's going, but at the moment, it's just kind of okay. But again, I can't tell you what to do. If any of these Apple Intelligence features seem like they will improve your day-to-day life, specifically the writing tools, for example, then by all means buy these phones, but know these phones have other features too that make them worth buying. So, you know, it's just nice that these extra features will be rolled in as time goes on. But in the meantime, if you want to save your money, if you want to buy a previous Gen 1, like a 15 model, for example, those are still great phones, minus AI capability. You can run DeepSeek or ChatGPT on there just fine, and you'll probably get more AI usage out of that phone compared to just Apple Intelligence features with the 15 Pro and newer phones. The next thing that I want to gripe about is the design of this phone here. The 16 Pro Max, sorry, actually that's the 15 Pro Max, you can't even tell. It's looked the same for the past 5 years. And the first 3 years, I was fine with that. I didn't really care, Apple's designs are timeless. I still am a fan of this design. Like, I'm not a person that just says redesign every year for the sake of redesign. People want that. No, I think that's stupid. I think Samsung tends to do that more so, and it's just ridiculous. They add these weird camera rings and colors and all that, and it's bizarre. But Apple is notorious for recycling the same design. And, albeit we got the dynamic island, that was a bit of a design change, but I mean, like, it's time to do something different. It's been 5 years, and again, I'm not for change just for the sake of change, but after 5 years, I think it's, fair to have a bit of an irrational argument and hope that they do something different. Albeit, I'm a little scared based off the renders if we're gonna have like 3 cameras up here or whatever. I don't know what the rationale for that would be. I'm still kind of a fan of this 3 tri-camera setup. It makes sense to me, but who knows what they'll do. I just trust that Apple kind of knows how design works, because like, for example, the AirPods came out and everybody thought they looked stupid, and now they're sort of the industry standard design for wired or wireless headphones. So, with regard to design here, yeah, something better be different. I'm not so much looking for a thinner phone that's going to be a different phone, apparently the 17 Air. But with the Pro Max, if we get a new camera design, sort of, maybe a new finish, maybe a new material, I don't know. That would be cool. There really isn't much you can do. I mean, like, when the iPhone first gen came out, there was a lot of ground to cover here. So again, I don't blame them for recycling the design. I mean, like, the first phone had just a back camera, it needed a front camera, it needed to have better materials, it needed to get bigger. So we're kind of at peak smartphone, at least in the sort of early AI era, So yeah, I mean, I don't know what they have up their sleeve. I'm not a leak channel. You can definitely look at the leaks and sort of, speculate yourself, look at the renders, whatever. But whatever Apple has to do to make this phone still timeless, still a classic, still sort of design that melts away, hardware that is beholden to the UI rather than the other way around. I trust that they'll do that. They just have to figure out a new way to do it. And honestly, I don't know how they're going to do it, but they better do it, because it would just be awkward to have a 17 Pro Max that looks just like this. So maybe I'll eat my words, if it looks very similar to this. But yeah, I mean, newer colors, maybe something more bold but tasteful would be nice. I don't know what it would be, but I'm crossing my fingers and I'm trusting Apple on this because, they are industry leaders in terms of design, and you may criticize them for recycling stuff again, but again, everybody's copying them, so they can't be doing too much wrong. And last up on my list of things to gripe about with the 16 Pro series is the resolution situation. It's a bit inconsistent because with the 1X camera, you get 24 megapixel standard. So yes, you can take 48 megapixel HEIF Max and RAW Max, which is nice, but you do get bigger file sizes. But out the gate, without doing anything compressed, you can take 24 megapixel photos with the 1X camera, which make for really wonderful, sharp photos here that you can zoom into and still see detail, again, without having a crazy file size. So I am a big fan of that. This is not the case if you want to use, of course, once again, the 0.5x camera, which does have the resolution for that. It does have a 48 megapixel sensor in there, but it's a similar situation to what the 14 Pro is working with. It had a higher resolution main sensor, but you could only unlock that higher resolution at or with RAW Max or RAW capture, which sucks because, like, you want to take advantage of that all the time because, again, for anything you're capturing, you get the ability to crop in more details are being captured. And again, you're not taking 40, 50, 60 megabyte files, or maybe even in the 20 range. You're still pretty compressed in the single digit megabyte range, which is wonderful. So I'm a huge fan of these high resolution images simply because, again, I can reformat them and crop them and whatever, zoom in on them for social media. Having extra resolution to work with is a big deal. It also allows you to crop in digitally with the optical quality zoom that Apple touts here. So I think that Apple needs to make that happen with the 0.5x camera and also the 5x camera. That's something I would love to see because then you could have technically, like beyond 120 millimeter, 150, 160, whatever, optically zoomed in, of course, in better lighting conditions and whatever would require that. But nonetheless, if we treated each camera like the 1X, you would have a crazy capable phone. And maybe that's what they're going for. You know, Apple kind of has to trickle down the camera features year over year. They just can't give us everything all at once, otherwise they couldn't sell us a phone. But yeah, again, I'd like to be able to take 24 megapixel photos default with this compressed file size across the board, ideally. More realistically with the ultra wide next year with the 17 Pro and Pro Max. Apparently we're also supposed to be getting a new front facing camera at 24 megapixels too, so we'll see how this 24 megapixel situation stacks up. But anyway, regardless of what I've said in this video, these are still fantastic phones to buy, minus their AI features, as I said previously too. The hardware here is stellar. I mean, Apple makes some of the best phones. You know, people argue that they're not very innovative or that these phones are behind. They're not. They're just boring and predictable, but they're still really, really great nonetheless, display-wise, camera-wise, software-wise, with some kinks here and there. iOS 18 has been interesting, but definitely more customizable, more fun, more personal. So if you're considering buying one of these, I really would, especially a regular Pro model with the display jump or size increase here. These are fantastic value phones with the added benefit of AI features down the line. But again, the 15 series is still a great, like specifically the regular 15 series is great for the features that you get. 24 megapixel photos included. Huge feature, I would argue, underrated. But yeah, I mean, these are great value phones. I will say though, even though we're sort of early into the year, I would wait to buy these because maybe you want a redesigned phone. That's probably more of what's going to be new with the 17 Pro and Pro Max at this point, you know, because it's iterative, it's evolutionary. Like, we're not seeing giant increases with any of these phones probably for a while, if not ever again. I mean, like, again, the original iPhone, there was a lot of ground to cover. We're seeing iterative, you know, improvements year over year, and that's the way it's going to be. And that's fine because we're kind of at peak smartphone right now. The future is spatial, the future is in glasses and stuff. So, you know, we're easing our way out, you know, as these wearable things get better, you know, and I believe that because Vision Pro is that crazy, but that's another video for another day. I would still consider these, but I would wait because either you're gonna go for the 17 Pro or Pro Max, which will be a better value because it looks better or newer or whatever, or you'll save yourself a couple $100 possibly buying a used one of these once the new model comes out, or buying it refurbished or new from your carrier or Apple when they come down in price. Actually, you won't be able to buy these new from Apple, but possibly refurbished, but definitely from your carrier for a reduced rate. And they'll still be fantastic. I mean, this is peak, you know, iPhone 12 pretty much. I thought that the 15 Pro was going to be that, but no, Apple held on to the design for a little while longer here. I'm not exactly complaining, but I mean, this is the best version of the iPhone 12 Pro. So, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, these phones are like Hondas, like they last forever. Clearly the design has worked for a while. To the point where I don't even know how Apple's going to improve the design to make it better, even though I want that. Anyway, with all this said, these are fantastic phones, but I personally would wait to see what the 17 Pro series looks like. But that's just me. I hope you enjoyed this video here. Thanks again to Pitaka for sponsoring this video. Check out my link to them again. And as always, I'm Noah, and I'll catch you all in the next one.